Do you feel like your mindset has gotten worse on the journey to your blessing? If so, stay tuned and I will teach you what to do when you are traumatized on your faith journey. What is going on, everyone? We are back for another episode of Prospering with Christ. I hope that you had a wonderful week last week, and I hope that this week will be just as amazing to you as well. So, for today's episode, we are discussing a topic that really isn't talked about, and that is what to do when you are traumatized on the journey to receiving your blessing. If you listen to my podcast often, then you know that I always talk about how following God's way does not equal an easy journey. See, a lot of us have this misconception of thinking that if we do everything that God told us to do, if we follow God's instructions, if we step out and we do things by faith, everything is going to work out. And yes, that is true. Everything is going to work out, but that does not mean that everything is going to work out immediately. We have to understand as we take this walk in Christ, as we take this walk into our faith journey, doing things God's way, it is not going to be easy. Doing things God's way comes with a lot of hardships. It comes with a lot of failures. It comes with a lot of challenges. And if you do not have clarity in this season, if you do not have clarity while you are on this journey, you will allow those experiences to break you and to birth things and birth mindsets into you that you did not have before. For example, I told you guys that earlier this year, I went through one of the worst seasons in my life. And while I was in that season, I was not being provided for. There were times where I didn't know if bills were going to be paid. There were times where I had to go without things. There were times where I didn't even know if I was going to have food to eat that night. And that experience birthed a lack mentality in me. I started my journey having all the faith in the world. There was nothing that you could tell me that God could not do for me. There was nothing that I felt like I couldn't have. But as I took the journey, as I walked into God's plan, as I followed God's lead, the experiences that I encountered birthed something in me that I never even had. And the reason why this happens is because we don't have clarity on why God is taking us through this. And our lack of clarity makes us only look at this, only look at this experience, only look at this situation from our own perspective. Our perspective tells us that this is just how things are going to be. Our perspective tells us that this is God's best for us. Clearly, He directed us to this, so this is the best thing that He has for us. Our perspective tells us that God isn't as miraculous as we thought. Our perspective tells us that we should have went our own way because clearly God doesn't know what He's doing. Our perspective tells us that God doesn't want to bless us in the same way that we see Him blessing other people. Our perspective makes us accept this experience and allow that experience to birth things in us that we never had before. And if we don't change our perspective and let go of the trauma and the feelings that has arisen by these experiences, these feelings and this trauma is going to affect our walk with God and God's purpose in our life moving forward. For example, let's go back to the story of me. God's main purpose for every single one of us is to serve. We are supposed to help other people. We are supposed to give to other people. We are supposed to serve other people. But my lack mentality, the lack mindset that I developed from my experiences, was blocking me from doing God's main mission. It was blocking me from helping, giving, and serving to other people. Every single time that somebody came to my house and they asked me, hey, can I have something to drink? In my mind, I'm like, no, because I don't know the next time that I'm going to be able to afford to get me something else. Every single time that somebody saw me cook something and they said, hey, can I have a plate? In my mind, I'm like, no, because I don't know where my next meal is going to come from and I need to make this stretch. My lack mentality put me in a position where I felt like I needed to hold on to everything because I was so afraid to go without. I was so afraid of if I was going to have more coming in, and it was blocking me from serving. It was blocking me from God's main purpose, which was to help other people, to give to other people. If you do not change the mindsets and the feelings that has came upon you on this journey, you will not fully be able to live out God's purpose. You will not fully be able to do God's will. So I know that the topic of being traumatized on your journey of following God isn't really talked about. You probably hear people talk about having faith and everything is going to work out. You might even hear people say that you may encounter things on the journey, but it's all going to work out for your good. But nobody ever really talks about the feelings that's going to develop in you while being on the journey, and the mindsets that you might adapt from your experiences on the journey. And so, in your mind, because this topic isn't really something that's discussed, you may be thinking, how do I know if I'm traumatized? And the number one way to know that you have experienced trauma on your journey is when your faith has died. You started this journey with more faith than you have now. There used to be a spark inside of you, but now you feel like that fire is not lit anymore. And you've been trying. You've been trying to trust God. You've been trying to rebuild your faith. You've been trying to hold on to the motivation and the good messages that you hear at church and that you hear from Christian people. But no matter how hard you try, you just cannot re-spark that fire. You just cannot get that fire to light again. And you have been in a place where you have been feeling like there is no hope. And the only reason why you feel like there is no hope is because of the experiences that you have encountered on this journey. See, you used to feel like it was hope. You used to feel like it was possible. But then when you experienced that failure, the fire started burning out. You used to feel like there was hope. But then when you lost everything, your fire started to burn out. You used to feel like there was hope. But then when you stepped out and you did the things that God told you to do, you followed the instructions that came from God, and you found yourself in a worse position than when you started, your fire started to burn out. If you have been in a place where you feel like your faith is dying or it's already burnt out, then that is a clear sign that you are traumatized from the things that you experienced on this journey of doing things God's way to get your blessing. And if that is you, then you have to determine what caused this trauma. When did your fire start to burn out? When did that spark start to get smaller? When did you begin to feel hopeless? When did your trust in God start to die down? What was the experiences? What was the failures? What did you go through that started this hopelessness inside of you? Because that is the experiences that you need to take to God and say, God, this is the reason why I don't trust you no more. I was doing things your way. I was following your will. I was being obedient. I wasn't the type of person who just prayed and then expected you to do everything. I wasn't the type of person who felt like my blessing was just going to magically fall out of the sky into my lap. I did everything that you told me to do, and I still experienced this failure. I still lost everything. My situation got worse. I was being a good person all throughout. Not only was I obeying you, I stopped sinning. I worked on my character. I started seeking you more. I did everything right. And this experience caused me to turn against you. This experience caused me to look at you differently. This experience caused me to stop trusting you. This is the moment where I started losing hope. This is the moment where my fire started to burn out. Be honest with God. What caused this hopelessness? What caused your faith to die? When did the symptoms come? See, death doesn't always come out of nowhere. Sometimes that person is sick. Sometimes that person has symptoms. Sometimes the doctor can look at the symptoms and go to the family and say, hey, this person only has this much amount of time until they have run their course. And in this journey, there's symptoms. In this journey, there's a place that you were at where we could see this is the moment where you started to die in your faith. This is the moment where time started to run out in your faith. And this is the moment where you need to go to God and you need to tell him, God, I only have this much time left in me until my faith has died completely. I only have this much time left in me until I fully give up and stop trusting you. This is the moment where the symptoms started to show. It was this experience. It was this failure. It was this mistake. It was this circumstance. This is the moment where the symptoms started to show up. And so even if you have not been in a place where your faith has completely died, even if you have not been in a place where you can see the symptoms, you can feel the symptoms, the next time that you have an experience, the next time that your circumstance gets worse, the next time that you experience a failure and these symptoms of your faith burning out starts to show, then you need to contact the doctor. You need to tell him how you're feeling and ask him for his help to work on you. The next way that you can tell that you have been traumatized on your faith journey is when you have a lot of fear. Not only has your faith become non-existent, but fear has been at an all-time high in your life. You have been in a place where you give into your fear more than you trust God. See, God and fear cannot coexist. You're either going to be afraid and you're going to trust in the things that you see and you're going to trust in the things that's birthing this fear inside of you, or you're going to turn against your circumstance. You're going to go against what you see. You're going to go against what's happening in your life. You're going to go against what people are telling you, and you're going to fully trust God on the things that he said he was going to do. You can't do both. Fear and trust cannot coexist. And for some of you, your faith has been dying and your fear has been arising. You started this journey with faith, and now all you have is fear. There are things that you used to feel like you could conquer, but recently you have found yourself being afraid of them. When you experienced hardships, obstacles, and setbacks in the past, your first thought was to seek God. You wanted to go to God. You wanted to pray. You wanted to get his plan. You wanted to get his blueprint on how to overcome this, how you can conquer this, how you can come out of this. And now, every single time that you experience an obstacle, every single time that the devil attacks you, every single time that you experience a setback, your initial thought is not to seek God. God isn't even in your plan. Your initial thought is to fear. Your initial thought is to panic. Your initial thought is to get discouraged. Your initial thought is to give up. Your initial thought is to complain. I'm so tired of things hitting me. Can't I just get a break? It's just one thing after the other. Can't I just get a blessing? I'm not even going to bother to seek God anymore because I know that he's not going to answer. I know what the outcome is going to be. I know what the result is going to be. It's going to be me wasting my time praying. It's going to be me wasting my time seeking him. It's going to be me begging him to please help me begging him to please open a door, me begging him to please give me one word of instruction that's going to put me in position for my breakthrough, that's going to put me closer to my breakthrough, that's going to finally help me overcome this. And I know he's not going to answer. Maybe you have had experiences where you have prayed and you have begged God to help you in an area that you actually need help in, and he never answers you when it comes to that area. But then when it comes to other areas in life, when it comes to other areas that's not really that big of a deal, he always speaks back to you. Sometimes he speaks back to you immediately. And that experience has caused you to feel like clearly God don't care. Clearly, God don't care about my housing situation. Clearly, God don't care about my finances. Clearly, God doesn't care about my job and my career and how I need a new one. Clearly, God doesn't care about my healing. Clearly, God doesn't care about what happened in my childhood, because every single time I seek him on that area, every single time I ask him to help me over there, he's completely silent. But then when I ask him for something simple, when I ask him for revelation when I'm reading my Bible, when I ask him what I should eat for dinner, when I'm praying over somebody else's circumstance and the advice that I should give to somebody else, he answers immediately. And that experience has caused you to feel like God doesn't care. God doesn't care about my situation. God doesn't care about my hardship. God led me into the hardship just to leave me. God led me into the hardship knowing that I was going to be in a worse position, knowing that this is not only attacking me physically, but it's also attacking me mentally and it's attacking me spiritually. And he left me, and I'm begging. I'm on my knees. I'm pleading. I'm crying out, and he's not answering. And that experience has caused us to stop seeking God because we feel like there's no use. It's going to be a waste of time for me to go pray. It's going to be a waste of time for me to go vent. It's going to be a waste of time for me to seek him out because I already know he's not going to help. And because I don't have an alternative, I don't have an alternative person to ask for help. I don't have an alternative person that I can put my trust in to bring me out of the situation. I don't have it in me to bring me out, and God clearly don't have it in him to bring me out because he's not bringing me out. So what am I going to do? I'm going to panic because I don't know what to do. Fear has been arising in you because your trust in God has been dying and you don't know what to do. And if you struggle with any of those thoughts or feelings that I just named, or you feel like there's no use in you seeking God anymore, there's no use in you praying anymore because clearly he's not going to help you, a lot of people will judge you for that. But I'm not here to judge you because I want you to know that while you're on this journey, that is a common and normal and okay feeling to have when you're trusting God and you're experiencing hardships and you're in a place where you feel like God isn't meeting you halfway. You feel like you're showing up. You feel like you're doing your part. You feel like you're being obedient to everything. You're growing your relationship spiritually with him. You're working on your character. You're being obedient to the things that he told you to do here on this earth. You're showing up and you're doing your part in every way possible. And you feel like God is not showing up. You feel like God is disappointing you. You feel like God is not bringing his half to the team. That is a normal feeling to have. And I don't want you, if you feel that way, to feel ashamed of it. But you do have to understand that you have to start taking in the things that you actually say. Because in the Christian community, we always talk about how God's ways are better than our ways, how we are not meant to understand his ways. We are not meant to understand his thoughts. We are not meant to understand why he does things the way that he does. And although we say that, when situations like this arise in our lives, the reason why it's so easy for us to have this perspective, the reason why it's so easy for us to give into fear and not trust God anymore and not want to seek him is because in these circumstances, we expect to understand what he's doing. We expect for him to move in ways that we want him to. And I know it's hard, but we have to get to a point where we become okay with knowing that God does not move in the same way that we move. God is not going to move from our understanding, because if he wanted to do things from the way that we understood, then there would be no reason for us to seek him. We could just do it ourselves. We could come up with the plan ourselves. We can get ourselves out of the situation. But there's a reason why we have to call on God, because he can do things that we can't do. He can come up with plans that we can't come up with. He can make ways that we cannot make. And so we're not going to always understand everything, but we have to trust that everything that God does, every single part of the journey, is going to work out for our good. The next way to know that you have experienced trauma on your faith journey is when you notice that your mindset has shifted in a negative way. When I was on my journey, I told you that I noticed that I was developing a lack mentality. I never struggled with lack a day in my life until I took this journey and experienced the things that God was putting me through on the way to my breakthrough. And so in this season of your life, you're going to have to become self-aware. You're going to have to pay attention to the mentality that you have. Pay attention to the thoughts that come inside your head. Pay attention to the things that come outside your mouth. Pay attention to the way that you think about certain things. Pay attention to the way that you start responding to the things that God tells you. See, in the past, when God would give me a promise, in the past, when God would tell me that he was going to do something for me, I had all the faith in the world. Okay, this is going to happen. But I noticed after going through my circumstance that when God would promise me something, I was hesitant. I didn't have all the faith that it was going to happen. I didn't trust that it was going to happen. I was hesitant. And so I had to become self-aware, and I had to start doing some reflecting. And I had to ask myself, why are you hesitant about this? And my answer to that question will always help me to understand the mentality that I was adapting. In this season of your life, why are you hesitant to trust what God told you? Why are you hesitant to trust what God promised you? Do you notice that your answer lines up with the lack mentality? A lack mentality is feeling like you're never going to have enough. I got to hold on to everything. I got to hold on to all the food that I have because I don't feel like I'm going to have enough. I don't know when the next time I'm going to be in a position to afford to go out and buy more. I'm going to hold on to all the money that I make. If it's not going on my bills, it's going in a savings account. I never go out to eat. I never spend money on myself. I never get my hair done. I never treat myself to anything because I got to hold on to every single dollar that I make because I'm so afraid of losing it. I'm so afraid of going without. I'm so afraid of not knowing when the next is going to come in or if next is going to come in. So I got to hold on to everything. I can never help myself nor help other people. Do you notice that you struggle with the lack mentality? Does your answer align with the poverty mentality? Do you struggle with feeling like it's not possible? Do you struggle with feeling like you got to get it out the mud? Do you struggle with feeling like you have to do all the work? You have to hustle. You have to grind. You got to make it happen in order to get this. And you can't accept what God is telling you because God's way doesn't require you getting it out the mud. God's way doesn't require you hustling and grinding. Do you have to go through things on this journey? Yes, you do. But it's not going to be you putting in blood, sweat, and tears and you trying to make this to happen for yourself. Does your answer align with the poverty mentality? Does your answer align with the limited mentality? Do you struggle to take in the things that God promised to do because you feel like there's only so much that can happen in your life? You feel like you have limited time. You feel like you have limited resources. Let's say that God is saying he wants to bless you to make $10,000 a month. And you feel like that can't happen because you work at this job and you can only bring in about $3,000 a month. You feel limited. You put a limitation on God and what he can do. You struggle to believe God because you feel like faith can only work up until a certain point. And when you get to that point, nothing else can be done. Or do you feel like your answer aligns with a realistic mentality? You struggle to believe the things that God tells you because it doesn't seem realistic. It doesn't seem like it's likely to happen. It seems impossible. It seems impossible for you. It may seem likely for somebody else. It may seem likely for a celebrity or for someone who was born in a different environment or who was born from a rich family or who was born from a different race. But for you, it doesn't seem likely. And so you've been struggling to obey God. You've been struggling to trust God. You've been struggling to accept what he promised to do because it doesn't seem realistic for you. If you notice that you have been adapting these negative mentalities and you didn't have them before you started, or if you did, you already overcame that mentality, but now you find yourself going back to that way of thinking, then that is a clear sign that your experiences on your journey has traumatized you. Are you enjoying this episode so far? Is this episode teaching you what to do when you feel traumatized on your journey to your breakthrough? If so, I want you to do me two favors. Favor number one, I want you to leave a review. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this episode. Leave an honest review and let me and others know how you are enjoying the show. And favor number two, if you know anyone who has found themselves in a worse position than what they started in while following God's way, and you notice that they have been changing in a negative way, then I want you to send this episode to them. Let this episode motivate and encourage them the same way that it is motivating and encouraging you. Now let's get back to the show. You have to deal with your trauma, because if you don't, it is going to affect your blessing. And when I say that it's going to affect your blessing, I don't mean that you won't receive it. I don't mean that God won't actually give you the thing that he promised to do. In some circumstances, he will, but what it's going to affect is the way that you manage it. It's going to affect the way that you handle it. It's going to affect the way that you steward over that blessing. Like I said earlier, God uses us for a purpose. The whole reason why every single one of us is on this earth is so that we can be servants to other people. We are supposed to help other people. We are supposed to guide other people. We are supposed to give to other people. And sometimes your blessing is about more than just you. Sometimes your blessing has a purpose to impact other people's lives. See, you think your blessing is small. You think, oh, I'm just praying for a house. Oh, I'm just praying for a car. Oh, I'm just praying for a marriage. But how do you know that you buying this house, by God blessing you to buy this house, you are breaking a generational curse of poverty in your family, because nobody in your family has ever been a homeowner? How do you not know by you getting into this godly marriage, there are people who are going to see your marriage and you are going to spark faith in them to start believing, because their faith has died a long time ago. They started to believe that all men were trash. They started to believe that there was no such thing as a loyal partner. They gave up on the thought of marriage. They started to view marriage as a business transaction. The only reason why I should get married at this point is because I just want somebody to help me pay the bills. But when they see your relationship, you spark faith in them again. See, your blessing is deeper than just you. Your blessing is going to impact other people. And if you do not deal with the trauma that you experience on the journey, it is going to affect the way that you steward that blessing. And the way that you steward that blessing is going to affect the impact that it has on other people. If you do not break free from the lack and the poverty mentality that you have adapted on this journey, then you will missteward your house. And then your house years down the line will go into foreclosure. And every single person who was supposed to be impacted, every single person who was supposed to have a spark of faith that made them believe that they could have a house too, that they could be a homeowner too, that they could do things differently too, is going to look at that and be like, see, I knew it wasn't going to work. Your trauma can kill somebody's faith when God's intention was to spark it. God's intention was to relight it. God's intention was to enhance it. God's intention was to use you to show them what was possible. If you don't deal with your trauma, it's going to affect your blessing. And it's also going to affect the way that you enjoy your blessing. God doesn't just want to give you the blessing. He wants you to actually be able to enjoy this new season that you are entering. And if you do not let go of the things that attached itself to you while you were taking this journey, you will never be in a place where you can properly enjoy the blessing. I just had a thought, because I love to compare the journey to your blessing as taking a road trip. And every single time that I take a road trip, and I get to my end destination. I get to the hotel. I get to somebody's house that I'm staying at. I get to wherever I go. One of the first things that I always do is I take a shower. And the reason why I take a shower is because I've been in a car for hours. It was hot. I've been sweating. I probably was wearing pajamas because I knew we were going to be driving for a long time. And I know that I need to wash off this sweat and I need to change into something nicer because I have finally arrived to where I was going. I had to wash off the sweat that I did not have when I first started the journey. The sweat started coming upon me as I was on the road, as I was taking the journey. I had to wash it off when I entered into my end destination because I knew that it was time for me to enjoy where I was. God is saying there are things that you are going to experience on your journey that is going to attach itself to you. And you need to let it go. You need to wash it off. You do not need to allow the sweat to stay on you while you are trying to enjoy the promised land. You do not need to allow the old clothes that you started with while you were traveling on this journey. You do not need to wear them while you are in the promised land. When you arrive, it is time to bathe. When you arrive, it is time to wash those things off and let them go. Let them go down the drain. See, if you hold on to those things, if you hold on to that sweat, if you try to wear the clothes that you wore on the journey into the new promised land, you will not be able to fully enjoy your breakthrough. You will not be able to fully enjoy the promise of God, and you will get to a place where you will start mistaking the blessing as a curse. Have you ever prayed for something and then God blessed you with it and then you started regretting praying for it? Sometimes that happens because you did not deal with what you needed to deal with. Sometimes that happens because you did not let go of the things that attached itself to you while you were taking this journey to your breakthrough. You tried to allow the things that attached itself to you on the journey into the promised land when you were supposed to shake it off before you entered. You need to shake off fear, hopelessness, and every single negative mindset and allow God to work on you. Allow Him to get you to adapt an abundance mindset, because an abundance mindset is what's needed for you to get this promise. An abundance mindset is what's needed for you to enjoy this promise. It's what's needed for you to impact people the way that God intended you to do with your blessing. And in order for God to help you, you have to ask Him for His help. You have to be real with Him about where you are. Be real with Him about what has attached itself to you on this journey to your breakthrough, and ask Him for His help. Tell Him the truth. God, I adapted a lack mentality. I don't know how to detach this lack from me. I don't know how to detach this poverty mentality from me. I don't know how to detach the fear, anxiety, and panic that I am feeling from me. I don't know how to attach faith to me again. I don't know how to trust you anymore. I have not seen you show up in my life. I have not seen you do the things that you promised to do. You promised to do this for me. You gave me the steps. I walked in them by faith and my situation got worse. I don't know how to trust you again. My spark has died and I need your help to relight it. Be honest with Him about where you are and ask Him for His help to get you to a better place. The second thing that you want to do is you want to go back to the basics. See, throughout this episode, I said that some of us have found ourselves in worse positions than what we started in. Some of us have adapted mentalities that we never even had before. And when this happens, when you are in a worse position than what you have started in, that is a clear sign that you need to go back to the basics. See, the reason why it's hard for some of us to make it out of this season is because we are trying to move from where we are instead of starting from step one again. And I'm not saying start from step one of your journey. I'm saying start from step one of the basics. Start from step one of wisdom. Relearn about faith. Relearn about your mindset. Relearn how to transform. Wisdom is not just a one-time thing. Sometimes you need a reminder. There is a reason why a lot of successful people constantly read the same books over and over again, because they know that learning that information once is not enough. They know that every once in a while they need to go back to the basics. They know that every once in a while they need to remind themselves of the things that they need to do and the things that they need to implement to continue to see change. And some of us have forgotten the basics. Some of us have been trying to move from where we are, trying to move from the wisdom that we currently have. And sometimes it's okay to go back to square one. Sometimes it's okay to reread that book. Sometimes it's okay to relearn about faith, to relearn about your mindset, to relearn how to overcome things, how to build yourself up. In this season, if you feel like you are in a worse position than where you started, it is time for you to go back to the basics, and it is time for you to relearn. Have you ever dreamed of making your voice heard and sharing your message with the world? Well, it's time to turn that dream into a reality by starting your very own podcast. I understand that many aspiring podcasters are held back by the worries of cost, complexity, and the time it takes to launch a podcast. That is why I'm excited to announce my new training program that has all the tools and knowledge you need to launch your very own podcast for free. My training will guide you through every single step of your podcast journey. You will learn how to plan, release, market, and grow your podcast from start to finish. So if you're ready to take a leap of faith and share your message with the world, click the link in the description below to access my new podcast training. Now let's get back to the show. Another thing that you can do on this journey is you can ask God to prove himself to you. See, for some of us, our faith has completely died, and we are in a place where it's going to take for us to see something. It's going to take for us to see a miracle. It's going to take for us to see something happen in our lives for us to start trusting God again. And if that is you, if you feel like you're in a place where I can't hear about it no more, I can't read that God did this anymore, I can't read how good God is anymore, I need to see it for myself, then ask God to prove himself to you. And don't feel ashamed to do this, because there were plenty of times in the Bible where God didn't just tell people to follow him, he proved himself to them. He proved himself to Gideon when Gideon wanted confirmation as to why he should be the one leading the Israelites out of slavery. He proved himself to the Israelites when they were worshiping false gods. He didn't just tell them, hey, I'm the one and only God. Those gods are fake. He proved himself to them by lighting a fire on wet ground. If God really wants you to follow him and he knows that your faith has died, he knows that you are in a place where you need to see something happen to re-spark that faith in you, he has no problem proving himself to you. So ask him to prove himself and give him the chance to do it. Because some of us will ask God to do things, but then we don't give him a chance to move. Or if he doesn't do it in our time frame, we give up and we're like, see, God ain't real. See, God can't do all the things that he says he can do. Give him a chance to prove himself to you. Another thing that you can do is seek God for clarity. Because like I said, there is a reason why we go through everything that we go through. And some of the experiences that you had on this journey, although they didn't feel good, although you might have lost, although you might have failed, although your circumstance might have got worse, it happened for a reason. And so seek God and ask him to give you clarity on why you had to experience that. Was this him who put you through that? Because like I said in previous episodes, every single bad thing that happens in our life did not come from God. Sometimes it can come from the devil, and sometimes we can man-make these things. So was he the one who even put you through that? And if he was, ask him, what did you want me to gain from that experience? What was I supposed to learn? How was I supposed to grow? Were you trying to break me down to build me back up? Why did I have to go through that? Get clarity over the situation, because when you do, it will shift your perspective to realize God didn't want to show me that I was going to lack. God didn't want to show me that I wasn't good enough. God didn't want to show me that he could only do limited things in my life. He was trying to show me something. He was trying to teach me something. He was trying to grow me. He was trying to strengthen me in some way. When you seek him for clarity, it will shift your perspective on the situation. And the last thing that you can do is you can start documenting and journaling the good things that happen to you. One thing that I started doing recently, like literally last week, is I created a gratitude journal where every single day I write down something that I am grateful for that God has did in my life that day, no matter how big or no matter how small it may be. And when you do something like this, it opens your eyes to see, yes, in some areas you may have lacked. Yes, in some areas life looks bad, but you are more blessed than what you thought you are. And it will help you build up your faith again. It will help you build up an abundance mentality again. If you just keep track of the things that God has done for you, keep track of situations in the past that God has brought you out of. If he could do it in the past, he will do it again. And if you need help with this, check out the Royal Faith Journal, because in the Royal Faith Journal, we have a faith track list where you can write down what you prayed for, when you started praying, and the day that God answered. And it will not only show you what God did, it will not only show you how you got a breakthrough, but it will show you how long God took to get you that breakthrough. And the link to the journal, if you want to check it out, is going to be in the description of this episode. And so remember, if you want to know if you have experienced trauma on your journey, you will know by if your faith is either dying or has fully died, if you feel like fear is arising in you and your trust in God is dying out, or if you've noticed that you have adapted negative mentalities on your journey, such as lack, limited, poverty, or a realistic mentality. It's important for you to deal with the trauma before you receive your blessing, because if you don't, it will affect the way that you steward, manage, and impact other people. And it will affect the way that you enjoy your blessing. You might get to a point where you start feeling like your blessing is a curse, when in actuality, it's just the fact that you did not let go and you did not deal with the things that attached itself to you on this journey. And in order for you to actually deal with these things and let them go, you're going to have to pray to God, be honest with him, and ask him for his help. Go back to the basics and relearn about faith and how to rebuild your mindset. Ask God to prove himself to you and give him a chance to do that. Seek him for clarity on why you had to experience the things that you had to experience. And start journaling and documenting all the things that God has done in your life. And so my action step for you today is, if you listen to this episode and you notice that you have been struggling with being traumatized on your journey, then I want you to take some time out of your week to seek God and be honest with him. Tell him how you are feeling and why you feel traumatized by that, and ask him to show you the way to start transforming your mind and start transforming your faith today. But that is all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe so that you get a notification every time a new episode is uploaded. Also, leave a review and let me and others know how you enjoyed the show. And you can also follow me on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok at Prospering with Christ. But that's all I have for you today, and I will see you next week.